one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. And I just want to send congratulations to Lou Enzel and his family as they travel to congratulate Isaac on his graduation from Ithaca, and allows me to be here tonight. We'd also like to take a moment to recognize and thank Charles Thalen for his service on the school board and all of the wonderful things that you've done over your career here at RSU1. Do you have any plans for after school?
Yeah, I'm going to be majoring in international politics and economics at Middlebury College. Thank you, everyone.
So, Charles, we didn't think it would be polite of us to invite you to the June meeting. So therefore, we have a little gift for you this evening. But seriously, thank you for representing Morse High School, RSU1, just so well, articulate, professional, really have been a conscientious board member. So we really appreciate it. I know it's hard on nights like tonight to give it up, especially when you're a senior, to be here, but really have appreciated your perspective. So thank you.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is to approve or amend the minutes for April 27th and May 4th.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
All in favor? Any opposed? Great. Any adjustments to the agenda? No. Okay, public session. Any members of the public here to speak on any items on the agenda tonight? No? Okay. And 7.0, staff report.
So we're very fortunate to have Olivia Druniak here tonight to give us a presentation. All of you know that she won a nationwide VFW essay competition and also won a $35,000 scholarship as a result. And we're very proud of her, and thought it would be good to have her come and talk about her experience and also share her essay with us tonight. So don't be nervous. Come on up to the mic, and thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liv Druniak. For those that don't know me, I'm a senior here at Morse, graduating in a couple of weeks. I this year submitted for the second time. I did it first time as a sophomore to the VFW essay contest called the Voice of Democracy competition. They do it every year, and the prompt changes. And this year, the prompt was, "What are you doing to show support and patriotism for our country?" And Mr. Stanton urged me to submit to it because this past summer I enlisted in the Coast Guard Reserves, trying to follow my mother and my brother. So I am going to read my essay and then talk a little bit about what that experience was like. Patriotism is more than the colors of our flag or the sound of our national anthem. It's the quiet promise we keep to the ideals that built this country. A lifelong passion for and commitment to the principles and beliefs that founded our nation. It's courage born from conviction, sacrifice made without reward, and service given not for recognition, but for faith in an inherent good. From the moment our founders pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, America was built on principles of freedom, duty, and unity. A belief that ordinary citizens could rise together to protect something extraordinary. To me, patriotism means carrying that promise forward. I've grown up watching my mother defend that very promise. My mother is a commander in the United States Coast Guard, and for over 20 years, she's devoted her life to the service of her country and its citizens. I've strived every day to live up to the example that she set. I've strived to live up to her example not only through words, but through action and service. I volunteer at my local food bank to ensure that every person in our great nation is treated with the care, compassion, and dignity they deserve. Because patriotism means lifting up those who share in the promise of America. I've dedicated countless hours to voter registration drives, believing wholeheartedly that access to the ballot is not only a privilege, but the beating heart of our democracy, the voice of its people. I've organized veteran appreciation events, luncheons, and gift drives to honor the brave men and women who have risked their lives to keep our nation free. Through these acts of service, I strive to embody the spirit of America: unity, sacrifice, and unwavering hope for a better future. Which is why, on November 15th, 2024, I enlisted in the United States Coast Guard at the age of 17. I didn't want to wait to serve my country, so I became one of 13 individuals selected across the nation to take part in a pilot program, allowing teenagers to enlist in the reserves between their junior and senior years of high school. I refused to give up on my education, but knew that I was capable of doing more, so I chose to serve in the military. I knew that liberty and freedom require sacrifice, and that was a sacrifice I was ready and willing to make. I fought my way through 8 weeks of basic training as the youngest and smallest person there. I fought my way through push-ups on hot pavement until my hands burned and peeled. Being forced to scream at pictures of drowning victims taped to the wall, "I couldn't save you," until bile scorched my throat raw. And running miles with blistered feet, my socks sticking to bloody skin. I fought my way through pain, uncertainty, and fear. But my patriotism didn't falter in the face of adversity, and in the hard moments, I relied on the strength of my conviction that I was serving something greater than myself, something worthy. Because I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for all the people I hope to help and all the lives I hope to make better. I enlisted because I believe in my country, through highs and lows, mistakes and imperfections. My patriotism lies not in this country's land or wealth, but in devotion to its principles and faith in its people. I trust that we will remain united and just, that we will care for our people, protect what is right, and stand up against what is wrong. I am doing my small part to give back to the country that has given me so much, and in tribute to the brave men and women who have come before me, hoping to uphold their legacy of honor and sacrifice. I will continue this commitment as I work through college, pursuing a degree in political science, to further advocate for the growth and preservation of our nation's values. I encourage everyone to find their own way to serve, to uphold the ideals that bind us together as Americans. Service doesn't always wear a uniform or stand at attention. It can be found in the classroom, in community centers, at the polls, or in the simple act of helping a neighbor. Patriotism lives in every person who chooses compassion over indifference, unity over division, and action over apathy. Whether through public service, volunteerism, or everyday kindness, we each have the power to strengthen our nation and carry forward the promise our founders made generations ago. Thank you. So I was sponsored by the Post 7738, it's located in Phippsburg, but it covers the Bath area. And particularly 2 members, Maggie and Mike, were very important from our journey. So I just wanted to say thank you to them once again. And if you're unfamiliar with the VFW and particularly that post, I definitely encourage you to find out more. They are a truly special group of people. And I'm very honored to have gone through this with all of them. So with me winning the state level for the VFW contest representing Maine, I was able to go down to Valley Forge for a week with all of the other state winners, the other 49, and then 1 from Europe and 1 from Korea as well, which was very cool. And there we got to do so much, and it was really fun. And we toured Valley Forge, Gettysburg. We got to watch a bunch of reenactments of the Revolutionary War and talk to Thomas Jefferson, which was probably my favorite part. We got to participate in mock debate and Congress, and we butchered Robert's rules, but it was a great experience. And getting to be around so many driven, like-minded young people like me definitely gives me hope in times that can be a little uncertain. So I'm very grateful for the experience, and thank you for having me tonight. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. So.
You are incredible.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for everything that you're doing and for sharing that with us. Any questions?
Olivia, when you're talking to the folks down in Phippsburg, if you could ask them if they know this woman named Jet Cushman. She was in the late 70s. She was probably like in her late 70s or early 80s. And I think she was one of the first women to have one of the highest levels of captain license in the state of Maine. And so she could captain like big commercial vessels. And it was pretty extraordinary at that time for somebody like that to hold that. And she was this really interesting, eccentric woman who used to row a dory from the shore out to her island when she lived on it. And she would swim in the ocean like every day, year round when she was living there. So she was just this really cool individual from Phippsburg. And because her last name is Cushman, I think a lot of people may have known her, but it's a pretty cool story if you ever get to hear about her. And thank you for it was wonderful.
Thank you very much. I'll definitely ask.
Thank you for that. That was really impressive and really inspiring to hear your essay. Thank you. Do you have like to ask people who are graduating, what do you have like a 5 to 10 year plan? What do you want to do when you grow up? That kind of thing.
So I'm headed to Boston College in the fall. I'm double majoring in political science and biology, and I want to work in environmental conservation and particularly reef restoration and coral regrowth, which I'm very passionate about. My dad's a scuba instructor, and I scuba dive a lot, so that's kind of where I want to go. But as for a 5 to 10 year plan, I'm just gonna kind of roll with it. I don't really know yet.
I have a question for you. Where does the Coast Guard fit into your future?
Absolutely. So I'm fortunate enough to be in the reserves, which means I'm not active duty. So it's not a full-time job for me. It's kind of the military's version of a part-time job. I work 1 weekend a month and then 2 weeks consecutively during the year, which I traditionally am going to do in the summer because that'll fit into school schedule. And I am low enlisted, so I don't have a lot of responsibility yet, which is kind of nice to just be able to break into it while I'm still in high school. And through that, I'm just mostly in training to be a bosun's mate, which we work on boats, that kind of thing. But it's not terribly time consuming, and I can do as much as I want with it. So I do love it, and I love the people I get to work with. So I definitely want to spend a lot of time with it this summer, but it doesn't exclude me from doing other things, which is really nice.
Can you talk about your speech? Was it mostly about content or delivery? Because obviously both were impressive here, but can you talk a little bit about that? And then also the process of you going in there, and did it get narrowed down to 10, 5?
Yeah. So as far as my speech, I'm so sorry. I am a little tired right now because we had senior reception this past weekend. So if I was a little drone, I apologize. But the submission is based on 2 aspects, both content and delivery, and they're weighted equally. Originality, that kind of thing, that all gets measured out. And then as far as the process of how you progress throughout the competition, you start at your post level. So for me, I won first place at post 7738 in Phippsburg, and then through there you get sent to your district level, and the district kind of covers the mid-coast area. And once I won there, I went to states, and then at states there was, I believe, 12 of us from all of the districts across Maine. I was selected first as there, which got me sent to nationals. And then the national competition, I believe they dole out over $1.5 million throughout the whole competition in scholarship money, which is unbelievable. So then from there, when we all got sent down to nationals, everyone receives a scholarship for being sent there from 50th up through, I believe, 30th. It's $1,000 to $5,000. And then from there, it starts to increase a little bit more until third place got, I want to say 15, second place got 22, and then first place got $35,000 in scholarship. So that's kind of how it got ruled out.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Mr. Libby. Hard act to follow.
I'm going to be here just for a moment and turn it over to more kids. So I'm here to speak just a minute about the boat building program that we offer and work through at Maine Maritime Museum. I know I've spoken to many of you through the budget process over the years about it, but I brought kids today to really tell you what it's all about. So they're going to come up in just a minute, but we have Ben Forrester with us. He's going to start us off tonight, kind of talk about how interest gets generated around the program. Holden Lano is going to then speak about how you get into the program, how you apply to that and go through that. Morgan Ridgway is going to talk about some of the projects they do in the boat construction. And then Molly's going to finish us off with a little bit about the staff that are involved down there to help keep all that running. At the end, they're happy to answer some questions. And if they don't share, I would like you to ask them what is their highlight or what's their takeaway from the program. So with that being said, Ben, come on up, bud.
So when I originally learned about the program, it was when they take all of the boats that they build down to the Nequasit boat launch, and the boat building kids get to launch them, and the rest of our middle school walks down to the boat launch and watches that happen. And it's a really fun thing to watch. And I saw that and I figured, why not? And I did that. It's a great program. I love it a lot. We have, when the year starts, there's an interest meeting that happens with Kurt and Dan that come to our school. They talk about some of the projects that we work on and how the day goes. And there's many other times that I'll see students bringing projects back from boat building. They make a stool, a toolbox, and a half model of the boats. And I see students bringing those in all the time. And it's, yeah. Well done.
Very good, Ben.
So when you try to, when after that and you get the interest, there will be a teacher. It used to be Miss Fisher. I don't know who necessarily gives out the papers now, but when you get the paper, you will have to write a note of why you want to get in. You will list stuff as like reasons you want to get in. You list past experiences that make you want to like get into it, and then your parents will write another note which goes along with yours to maybe make yours have like a bit more extra to it because it's their side of why they think you should go. And even if you don't get in the first time, like because there's 2 years, there's 7th and 8th grade. And if they give it out in 7th grade, if you don't make it in, usually they save a spot for you in 8th grade. And once you have the spot saved in 8th grade, once it comes back around, they'll ask you if you want to go. And if you say yes, you go.
So once you've applied and they've accepted you, we do 3 projects before we start the boat. So first we make a tripod stool and we learn about joinery. So the surface of the stool has different joints, which are ways to connect 2 pieces of wood to be the strongest. And after we finish our stools, we move on to toolboxes. So they're about this big, and we learn about a bunch of things like bunging and how to make the things fit together and make the pieces of wood look really nice. And then we make a half model, which is actually half to scale model of the boat that you can hang up on a wall, and we put a nice backing on it. And we use the bandsaw and we plane a bunch when we do that. And then we start building the boat. So the boat is a 12-foot long, I believe, Yankee tender. And it has 4 planks. So first we put a bunch of pieces of white plywood on the floor and draw the plans up to scale so that we can base the boat off something. And that's called lofting. And then we make a frame to build the boat around, and that includes the stem and the transom. And then we put our 4 planks on either side on the boat and the bottom on, and that takes the majority of the air. And then we flip the boat off the frame and put rails on and paint it and finish it, and then you have a finished boat.
So the way I learned about boat building was through my siblings. They both went through the program, and both of them came home raving about the people that worked there and how kind and responsible they were. They care about student safety, and then they focus on making it a fun environment. They always make sure you have hearing and eye protection at times you need it, and you're always monitored at the bandsaw and like motor tools. And they really just watch over every single kid and make sure they split us into groups if there aren't enough volunteers. But there's so many volunteers there who want to be there. They sacrifice their time to help us work on the boats. And Kurt and Dan know a lot about the boats, and they help us out a lot, and they guide us through the entire process. They explain it well, like really well, to us so that we really understand it.
I'm just going to add one thing before I even come back up. I meant to say this earlier. Like, I think it's a real credit to the program that when I offered the whole group to come tonight, I had at least 12 kids that wanted to come out of the 15. Like, they just really wanted to come talk about it. Obviously, a busy sports season and all of that, that these 4 lucky individuals came tonight. But why don't you all come back up and then just tell one thing that either your highlight or one thing you learned. And then if they have any other questions, you can take them as a team, okay?
So I personally love all of the volunteers there. They're super kind, super helpful, and they just are incredible.
My highlight, I like how it gives you opportunity to have access to so many tools that you usually wouldn't have access to, and you do a lot more physical work than you would on a normal school day.
My highlight is also what Holden said. You have more access to tools and being able to build more things than you normally would.
I think for me, the most fun thing is learning all the different skills for building these boats and woodworking in general.
That's so great. I think every year we learn something new about the boat building program, and every year just so impressed with the just care and what you guys are actually able to create and to learn. Kurt, is there anything you wanted to share? If you can switch hats real quick and talk about the boat building program.
Thanks to all of you. That was impressive. Appreciate all your genuine words. I think it was really comprehensive, and it's not why you're here, but it meant a lot to me to hear you say that. So thank you. I guess I could just add a little bit of kind of boring factual stuff. I think it's our 17th consecutive year outside of the COVID year. And the experience is funded by RSU1, it's funded by private donations, and it's funded by the town of Woolwich. So there's a lot of people helping out. And obviously the students mentioned there's a lot of volunteers, some of which have been at the museum for over 15 years. So and obviously as a staff member involved in the program, it's generally every year it's a real gift to be able to work with Woolwich School. So thanks. Is that good enough? Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question. What's your favorite power tool?
I really enjoy the bandsaw, which is
I agree with Morgan. I also really enjoy the bandsaw.
Probably also the bandsaw.
Yeah, me too, the bandsaw.
I got a quick question. Are you guys going to get done on time this year, you think? Okay.
I'm not a carpenter, so I was wondering, do you use any math at all in building a boat?
I think we do, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't really realize it. There's a lot of angles, but we don't really measure them. It's just like there's different ways and frames and stuff, yeah, that you can measure with.
Do you guys do the measuring, or or Kurt does all that? Or he does. Who does all the measuring, calculating on like if a board's gonna fit or that sort of thing, and the angle and the bend of it, and how do you bend the wood?
So we do most of the measuring, and we do a lot of spacing and stuff. And we bend the boards by using a thing called a steam box. And some of the boards are just naturally flexible. Like the planks are cedar, which is very thin. And we can just bend those around the boat with force. But some of the pieces we have to bend in a steam box, which is basically steam heated and put into a box that we put the wood in. And there's a specific formula for the time that you put it in. I think it's like, I don't remember, but once we take it out, then it's really easy to bend onto the frame.
And you're using steel, like how are you putting it all together? Is it with all wood, and how is it being sealed, or is it fiberglass or nuts and bolts? What do you use in there?
We use a lot. A lot of it is bunging and gluing, and it works very well. We do other, like, there's a lot. We have to do a lot with like the drills. It's mostly like it's like screws. A lot of screws are used, but you also have to. I always remember I have to bung it afterwards, most of the time.
What's bunging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you drill a screw in, and then you add in the same color wood as around the screw, and you cover up the screw with it, and you cut off the excess wood so it looks like it blends in completely wood. We use a sealant called Sikaflex, and it's waterproof, so we put it in between the gaps so that water can't seep in or anything.
Well, yeah, they haven't got to the painting part yet, but I don't know if you probably already figured this out, but we don't actually we don't use any kind of waterproofing agent. You know, the wood joins together tightly enough and it swells enough when it comes into contact with water that it should keep the water out. But there's no fiberglass, there's no, any other kind of. Yeah, like they mentioned, we use a polyurethane based caulking for some of the joints. And then I just wanted to say one thing that you probably already figured this out too, but our goal isn't to produce the next generation of wooden boat builders in Midcoast, Maine, even though we should have some. It's more to get you to problem solve and to struggle and to fix mistakes should you ever make one. That's kind of the goal of the program.
What happens to the boat once it's all constructed?
So we bring all of the boats to the Nequasit boat launch once they're done, and we launch them all there, like I had said. And then I believe they get auctioned off to anyone who wants to buy them. And then the money from that goes back to the program and supports it.
So if you're interested, Charles, I will have one available June 15th approximately. Maine Maritime will also have one.
So thank you, students, for being here tonight. And I want to thank you, the students from Woolwich, and also Kurt, is that when you walk over there and you see these students working, I mean, there's probably a volunteer almost to have a one-on-one situation. And those volunteers have come back for many, many years. And that constant is you being there, but also our students and their behavior and their work ethic. And would like to publicly just thank the volunteers that are over there. We really appreciate their efforts. So thank you.
Okay, next up, 7.3.
So Micah Depper's here with a crew. And if you remember, was it 18 months ago, Micah? I think it was was it 18 months ago or a year ago? Were we here?
We were here in October.
Right, but I meant like when we first the board first heard our kind of commitment.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Okay.
I've got a great way of marking time because today's my daughter's birthday.
And you're here
tonight.
tonight.
To that meeting with present or not 2 years ago,
All right.
but I did not.
So we have students here and Micah here and maybe some community members here too as well to just do a presentation to kind of give you an update of where we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
First off, my face kind of hurts from smiling so much at this board meeting. That just tells me so much about this district. And before we jump into talking about climate, I also wanted to say that our alternative program, Bath Middle School, has also been going to the boat shop this trimester, and it's been wonderful for them as well. So just wanted to say again, what an incredible service Maine Maritime offers to our students, what an incredible learning opportunity. So switching hats. I'm here, I'm so excited to present about the draft of the RSU1 Climate Action Plan. And there are a number of people who are part of this effort who are here tonight. So I want to acknowledge that Patty McLaughlin is part of our crew here. Charlie Thalen has been here. We've got student speakers, Summer Irishstein, Anda Hoig, and Ella Slusher. And then from our kind of at-large community, we've got Connor English here. We've got Bethany Atkins, who's been part of our efforts, Mary Osco, who's been part of our efforts, Brant Lukes, who's a teacher at BMS, and Julie Stone, a JMG teacher at Bath Tech. So all of those people have been part of this very collaborative effort. So, and I apologize in advance, Damien, I did slide animation, so we'll just make eye contact. All right, go for it. All right, so we're here to talk about why RSU1 needs a climate action plan, update you on how we made this plan, summarize it, and talk about where we're going next. So why are we asking RSU1 to accept and move forward with a climate action plan? Turns out that schools are a huge piece of the carbon puzzle in the United States and around the world. If you look at K-12 education in the United States, we operate close to 500,000 buses. We have 100,000 school buildings in various states of repair. And we serve 7 billion meals annually. And so that makes us basically second to the Defense Department as far as the public sector is concerned and equivalent to 18 coal-fired power plants. Yet, despite that, only about 4% of US schools have set any targets to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So if you look at our very pressing need to decarbonize to avoid the worst effects of climate change around the world, it's not just important, it is absolutely essential that schools be part of that solution. And it's very feasible that we get in on the game here. So the US, as we all probably know, has a disproportionate share of the global carbon footprint, generating about 5 times our fair share. So we've got our work cut out for us, and we're going to talk about some ways we're going to do that. Now, there's a very pressing local reason we should be doing this. And so we've got kind of a triple bottom line here of climate and environment, efficiency and cost savings, and health and well-being. If you think about where we live on the coast of Maine, several of our major heritage industries, which have been part of the state's identity and economic engine for the last couple hundred years, are imperiled by climate change. Lobstering, shellfish harvesting, maple syrup production are all industries that are changing, shifting, and diminishing due to climate change. That's a picture of the Kennebec Tavern downtown a couple years ago. Downtown Bath is slated to take some pretty serious impacts from rising sea levels. And we've had days in RSU1 where we've had to have kids not get to school because of, flooding on roads. And that's, we're taking care of the safety of our students, but we need to acknowledge that that's impacting education there. So that's the environmental case. The efficiency and cost savings case. Behind personnel, energy costs are the second biggest cost for school districts. So any ways that we can become more efficient, guarantee that more of our tax dollars go to educating our students and not out our windows when they leak. And I've got a picture there of one of the RSU1 has built such a great reputation in this regard. And this is what's so exciting about this work. We already have momentum from such thoughtful leadership from our board and our administrative team and central office over the many years, including investing in a solar farm in Pittston, Maine, which is projected to save the district about $700,000 over 20 years. And so any of those efficiency gains that we can make are going to help our bottom line. The last one there, health and well-being. There's a mental health case for and a physical health case for investing in efficiency and ventilation improvements in buildings. Over 50% of kids in the United States have stress, anxiety, grief associated with the climate crisis. And we also know that any improvements that we can make to, building health and safety are going to benefit our students. So there's a few really, really good reasons to be working on this. So 2 years ago, teachers and students stood before you and asked you to pass the second only in the state of Maine climate action policy called Maine Won't Wait, named after, RSU1 Won't Wait, named after Maine Won't Wait. And it created this working group of teachers, students, community members, and RSU1 leadership that's been meeting over the last 2 school years. And we were tasked with coming up with some recommendations for how we could achieve our 2 big ambitious goals, which are to reduce emissions and waste throughout the operations of the district, considering everything that we could look at from energy use, sourcing, HVAC, efficiency upgrades, waste reduction, purchasing, transportation, and what have you. And then the second big ambitious goal was to ensure that every student who comes out of RSU1 is climate literate, that they understand why climate change is a problem, how it's caused, but most importantly, that they have the chance to engage in solutions-based education, that we don't just stop at this is a crisis that's going to affect you, but that we empower these students with experiences where they're going out and making a difference in their communities, which already is happening in classrooms throughout the district. And we wanted to codify that and go, how do we take the best practices that our teachers have going on, whether it's the expedition happening down Phippsburg Elementary School around climate change and resilience, or the green crab expeditions at BMS, taking that and making sure that every kid who goes through this district, regardless of which schools they go through, gets those types of experiences. And that we're also preparing students to engage in a changing economy, which is going to have different looking jobs than we had before. So those are the big goals. And this process was, how are we going to achieve that at our scale? What was so amazing about this process, to me, the best part was having so many students at the table. As you can see there, the section that's by far the largest is students. We just recently recruited 7 new students who are rising juniors to replace 4 really amazing seniors who were here contributing to the first phase of this plan. Yeah, Damien. So here's the roadmap. This is the process that we took. 2 years ago, spring, we worked with stakeholder groups in the community and throughout the district to plan what the policy would look like. We followed models from around the country. We did a lot of research. We looked at local examples and state examples. We looked at the climate committee's documents that came out of Rouseck and Phippsburg and Bath and Woolwich, and all those towns had either new or well-developed climate resilience committees. And we took a bunch of input into making that initial policy. Once we formed that working group, we can't do everything. We're, a medium-sized semi-rural district with, limited resources and people. What are the things that are going to capitalize on what we already do well as a district and tackle the things that are going to have the biggest impact, fewer high impact things, and then a lot of low hanging fruit if we could get it. We collected data. We started an energy audit a really major energy audit, which we just got a report back on at the building committee last week, that was paid for with grant funding from Maine DOE. So that came at no cost to taxpayers in RSU1, but has helped us prioritize a number of different projects that would help us reduce costs and our greenhouse gas input. And then relaunching green teams at both of our middle schools, which have been very, very effective. This last year, school year 25-26, we really focused on developing the plan. So that was based on looking at templates from RSU or AOS 91 up in Bar Harbor that's been doing a lot of work on this, as well as climate action plans from big cities like Denver, which has kind of like a best-in-class climate action plan, but they have millions of people in Denver and we're much smaller. How do we shrink that back? So, and then we took feedback and we went through many iterations of feedback on that before we created the plan that you've hopefully gotten to review today. So we'll be looking next year towards how do we implement this plan. It has on it roughly 50 action items. And so we're not planning to do all of those this year. It's not possible. We'll have to prioritize based on several different, factors and lenses that we can look at, figure out how we're going to monitor progress on those goals to make sure that they don't just become a piece of paper on a shelf. And then make sure that it's a living document, that, there's transparency to the public, to the board about what we're doing, that we change what we're prioritizing based on changing in economic conditions and whatever. So that's the plan looking forward. And here's the summary of what the plan includes. So there are 4 different key strategic areas that we've chosen to focus on. The first is net zero new construction. The second is building electrification and energy efficiency. The third is resource consumption and waste reduction. And the fourth is education and engagement. Within each goal or strategy area, there are 2 overarching goals, like what are we aiming at in the 2030 to 2040 horizon that we'd like to see achieved. Those are indexed to, realistic models at the state level. And then, 8 to 12 actions per strategy. And we tried to balance out quick win projects that would be free or no cost or low cost with things that would be more complex multi-year type projects. And we've prioritized those things based on, are they going to have an impact on our climate footprint? Are they going to have an impact on the health and well-being of our students and community? Are they achievable based on cost and feasibility? And do they have high educational impact? And the items that aren't kind of reaching all of those different tiers are not going to be prioritized. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an in-depth dive on why we picked those 4 strategy areas and talk about a sample goal and action item from each of those. So I'll speak to the first, and then our students are going to each speak to the other strategies. The first one is we have this incredible opportunity to build a K-5. And we would like to recommend that we try and achieve net zero standards in that building process. Net zero is this notion that the energy that is consumed by a building is equivalent to the renewable energy that's produced by that building or by carbon offsets or sourcing things that you do. These buildings use 65 to 80% less energy annually than traditionally constructed schools. And the first thing that a lot of people think when they hear that is, that's great, that's going to be a premium. We've been working with consultants. We've started working with consultants from an organization called Undaunted, which is a nonprofit organization. They're funded by charitable donations, and so they offer consultation at no service. And they also compile research on green construction from around the country and have shown case studies and white paper research from organizations like NREL that show that this type of construction is in fact achievable at no significant difference in cost from a traditional school. And the reason that's possible is, for example, if you tighten your building envelope, which costs more money, you can right size your HVAC system to be smaller, which saves you money. And so if you get at this early in the process and you think about optimal solar siting for your building, optimal size of everything, you can use an equation to figure out how to achieve a low energy use profile for a building at a comparable cost. So that's our first recommendation. And I'm going to invite up Summer to talk about building electrification.
Our second strategy focuses on building electrification and energy efficiency. Electrifying buildings is an essential step towards decarbonization because electricity can eventually be sourced entirely from renewable energy. RSU1 has already made significant progress in this area, from installing efficient LED lighting throughout the district to partnering with Revision Energy to source electricity from a solar farm in Pittston, Maine. These projects are not only good for the environment, they also save money for the district and taxpayers. For example, the district is projected to save more than $700,000 over 20 years from the Revision Solar Share program. Energy efficiency comes not only from upgrading equipment and systems, but also from changing everyday behaviors. Simple practices like turning off lights and smart boards when they are not in use can reduce energy waste immediately, with no cost to the district. These are practical, common sense habits that we can begin prioritizing right away. One of our second long-term goals is to maximize energy efficiency across district operations and electrify building systems whenever possible by 2030. We want to highlight 2 action steps already underway to support this goal. First, the district partnered with Building Infrastructure Management Solutions, or BMIS, to construct a comprehensive energy audit of district buildings. Over the past year, BMIS has evaluated building systems, energy usage patterns, and classroom ventilation at no cost to the district thanks to grant funding from the Department of Education. In addition, our faculty's department has pursued several quick win efficiency upgrades throughout the district, including reducing air leaks, improving HVAC performance, and expanding the use of LED lighting and motion sensor switches.
Our third strategy focuses on reducing resource consumption and waste. So schools produce an astonishing amount of solid waste, most of which can actually be diverted from landfill. For example, last spring, Bath Middle School conducted a cafeteria waste audit. In just one day, the cafeteria produced 90 pounds of waste. However, half of that waste was compostable food scraps, and only 16% was actual trash after recyclable materials and unopened food were removed. These unopened items could instead be redistributed throughout share tables or refrigerators. When you multiply these numbers across all of our schools in 175 school days each year, it becomes clear how much opportunity there is for improvement. These changes may also save the district money. Last year, the facilities department audited district dumpsters and found that we could reduce the number of waste pickups. These savings from the reduced pickups were more than enough to fund composting services at Bath Middle School. Many of the actions included in this strategy and practical win-win solutions that benefit both the environment and the district budget. There are many grant opportunities available for composting and waste diversion projects, which could allow us to implement these programs to little to no additional cost to the district.
Our final strategy focuses on education and engagement around climate issues. Simply put, people cannot effectively address a problem they do not fully understand. When students are equipped with knowledge and opportunities to brainstorm and implement solutions, they are empowered to make environmentally responsible choices in their personal lives, pursue careers in the growing green economy, and contribute innovative ideas that can make a global impact. The impact of climate education is measurable. A 2020 study by Cordero found that if just 16% of students in middle and high-income countries received climate change education, it could reduce nearly 19 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. Our goal is to ensure that every RSU1 graduate receives solution-oriented climate education at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Actions such as adopting a district-wide climate literacy curriculum and incorporating energy conservation and waste reduction education into student learning will help us achieve this important goal.
So our next steps are, we, hoped that the board will consider and, accept this plan. And if we do that, we'll be able to prioritize these action items. And we're considering this to be a plan that looks far into the future, past the fluctuations from year to year, and goes, what can we do in the moment that we have every year to make a difference on these big issues? So we hope to prioritize the action items, figure out some project management tools, whether it's, interactive dashboards to communicate our progress. This is actually taken from the city of Bath, that wheel chart there. They've introduced a new live climate action dashboard, which shows their progress on the Resilient Bath Plan. So that's inspiration there for communicating what things we've tackled, what things we've tabled, and what things are in progress. Or, a Gantt chart like that one at the bottom, which takes these action items and spreads them out over a time axis and helps us identify what we're accomplishing at different stages. And then collecting data, making sure that there are project owners for these different things. This is a big, ambitious plan. It will take the collaboration of many people to achieve. And we anticipate that this will be intended to be a living document, that we would update the board, at least annually, and then update every 3 years and bring back for acceptance as our priorities change and we accomplish work. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, students. You did an amazing job, and we're delighted to take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys have been very, very busy. It's wonderful to see. Any questions? Jen, Kurt?
Always the curious person. So as we're continuing to, or if you want to rely more on electrification, does any part of your research look at the delivery of that offsite electrification and how Maine has one of the oldest grids to deliver electricity, and the power plants that create that electricity? And are there any thoughts on how to become more locally, have a local backup to be able to replace electricity if the grid goes out, or if there is a loss of energy over a long distance that electricity has to travel on the grid? So what's the backup plan for something like that?
We hadn't considered the state's aging grid,
Okay.
but that is great to know. Strategies like seeking local photovoltaics, one of our action items is to put out an RFP for, this building, for example, is photovoltaic ready, but we haven't found, I believe, funding for that yet. So seeking RFPs for that and looking for creative ways to finance that, whether it's private financing or grant funding or fundraising or things like that. But my understanding, our district has been really thoughtful about making sure there's redundancy in our systems and our buildings are well powered and all that sort of stuff. But we hadn't considered kind of past our own footprint.
So my next question would be about net zero construction. The net zero construction, the end result is really great, but as you look at that, do you also have to look at the individual components that go in that? Because sometimes the individual products aren't necessarily environmentally friendly when it comes to creating such an airtight and an energy building construction. So how do you balance the end result with the actual products that would go into be building net zero?
I would say that's something that we're entrusting our excellent architectural team to do. Those goals have been shared with them, and they're the subject matter experts. What we've heard is, you think of the energy use intensity of a building kind of like the miles per gallon that a car gets, right? So the higher the miles per gallon, the more efficient the car. In the case of a building, the lower the energy use intensity, or EUI, the more efficient the building is. And the goal is not to get the lowest possible number. I'm sure there's a sweet spot in there where the building's health and ventilation performance and all that sort of stuff is balanced against achieving the best energy efficiency gains. And, we're working with LaValle Brensinger, who we worked with on the last build and has delivered really excellent results for RSU1 and other schools around the district or state. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
I don't know if I can form it into a question, but first of all, thanks everyone for coming up and speaking. Ella, former boat building alum, just to give you a shout out there. And I guess you have a lot of goals and a lot of action items. And I feel like this happens a lot in life when you get really excited about something and you come up against a school board or a town or a government or architectural firm or a budget, which is really what we're all talking about here, I guess. So I think I just want you to know that we have to do, school board has to do stuff based on your ideas. And we can't do everything, but it's now on us to kind of understand what's needed. And thank you for figuring out ways to save money, to spend money that will then be offset by saving. So I think that's something that we can all get behind, right? All of us. Saving money. So I think it's tricky because we don't want to see you put in all this work that was mentioned and then have it not go anywhere because of the grown-ups in the room that can't figure it out. So I don't know if that's not really a question. Thank you. And we're going to be working on this.
Semi-pledge.
We need to all do better. We need to do better. And thank you for giving us the enthusiasm to do our best to try to do better with our great architectural team.
Well, and if I could say something to that, again, this is intended to be a document to guide us at least 15, if not 25 years into the future. So these are lean years where we're making tough decisions about the budget. And we come with a lot of humility about that with this plan. Nowhere in the plan does it say we're committing to doing all of this next year. In fact, it deliberately says not, that we're going to prioritize items based on what meets the conditions at the moment. But also, nobody could really predict a year like when all the COVID money became available in response to a national crisis, or a changing administration where more investment might be possible in energy infrastructure. And so we recognize that now might not be that moment, but it's a good moment to commit to doing it. So when those opportunities come, we can avail ourselves of them. So I think that's the spirit of it.
Question. Why did you three decide you wanted to do this project? What inspired you to do it?
Okay. Well, personally, I was noticing, especially in cafeteria times and like meal times, there used to be a compost bin, and then recently it just disappeared. And I was always curious about that, because I saw people getting lunch and immediately putting their apple either in that like fridge thing they have there, and it ends up just getting disposed of at the end of the day. Even though it's like mandatory with the lunches, you have to get a fruit vegetable, which makes sense obviously. But I was just seeing a lot of food waste, and with nowhere really beneficial to put it. Like they would just throw their whole tray in the trash, and it was astounding to me. It was not anything that I wanted to be seeing, especially from so many people every single day. So I wanted to look into this and see what we could be doing to change things like that, and kind of voice our opinion as students, seeing things directly, saying what we were witnessing firsthand, and see what we could do to help support change.
How about you, Summer? What inspired you?
Yeah, kind of going off of what Anna was saying, just like all the waste I've seen and just not really feeling like there's much to like do about it as students until I saw like this opportunity. Just like whether it's in class with like paper or at lunch with like plastic silverware, just like feeling like we're just like, just like so much waste. And I've always like wondered like where I could like go to like kind of have like input to like stop that, because I feel like there's so much we could do that like hasn't been done. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to try and do some of that.
I also feel like it's kind of really hard to like influence students if you're like a teacher or something, because like I feel like students can also help influence other students. And so if like if we're on the climate committee and we're kind of researching like the information on why it's important to be efficient, then we can kind of help influence and like mandate like the climate, like the disposable stuff. And yeah.
So So outside of school, how does climate resilience, where does it take you guys outside of the school?
How do you imagine this like impacting your life, your future?
I mean, when you think about today and like the world around you and how everything is like developing so quickly, it's not always in the most environmentally friendly way. And so I think that like as youth who will grow up in this world basically our whole lives, it's good to start now and good to start somewhere and kind of just see where you can make an impact, especially joining the workforce, getting into like higher education systems, getting that experience now so that we can use it later to change whatever we see. Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's lives are built around like the planet, but like I feel like a lot of like what I love to do and stuff is built around the planet, like whether it's skiing or hiking or camping. And I just feel like as we're like a lot of young people like are the people who are going to be like inheriting this planet, it's important for us to have like a say in this and make it better since we're going to be spending like the rest of our lives in it and care about it.
Any other questions or thoughts? Thank you all for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Okay, 8.0 Student Board Report.
Okay, so we're going to start off with a few sports updates. It's nearing the middle of the spring season now for most teams. So girls tennis, they have a 6-2 record, and the girls and boys have a doubleheader match at home tomorrow if anyone has time for that. They also have their senior nights. Boys, I think, is also tomorrow night, and then the girls isn't until next week, like Monday, possibly early week at some point. And then girls lacrosse, even though they have a slightly less impressive record than the tennis team, they're hosting Lincoln Academy tomorrow at home, and their game is dedicated to Morgan's Message, which is raising awareness about athlete mental health. And then the track and field senior night is this Wednesday at home, which is also the last regular season meet before championships.
And then Academic Awards Night is this Thursday, May 21st. Students from all grades will be honored for excelling in classes, and juniors will also receive book awards, which are often tied to scholarships or scholarship opportunities. And then further on scholarships, Scholarship Night is June 11th. That's 2 Thursdays from this Thursday. It's a very important night for the senior class. Last year totaled roughly $300,000 from the community to the graduating class for their post-grad plans. And then we have prom last weekend. The class of 2027 just organized prom for the class of 2026, which was hosted at the Taste of Maine. It really was awesome to walk in and just see the big inflatable lobster right on the roof there. The event was a fundraiser for the Junior Class Fund, which will be used to organize next year's homecoming, and in the years to come will help sponsor alumni banquets for their class. Senior Aiden Belanger and his student band 100 Acres rocked the show with some live music.
And then a few things coming up this week. Step Up Day for 8th graders is this Friday. So there's a lot of students from Morse who will either be giving tours or standing at club or sports tables in the gym to try to recruit some incoming students. And this Wednesday is the SDLC Mainsail Assembly, which honors a member of the RSU1 community who's made an impact on the district. And that'll be followed by a luncheon with all of the previous recipients who come to the assembly.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions from anyone on that? No? All right, 9.0 Superintendent's Report.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know you sat through a lot of presentations and we have one more. So, but just want to note that Morris High School is recognized as, I guess, the state model this year for the Best Buddies program, which is another tribute, as you know, how much we do here with unified programming at Morse. Just another chapter that Charlie and other staff here, Charlie Bingham, have taken on. And so it's quite an honor to be selected by the state of Maine to be kind of the leader in that work and be the exemplar this year. So congratulations to them. One other thing, or maybe I have one other thing after this, but Bath Tech Student of the Year, I just want to recognize Allison Mitchell, who will be recognized on Wednesday evening. We're doing the Bath Tech kind of closing ceremony in the evening instead of during the day. And just a little bit about Allison. She's a senior in our early childhood program, plays 2 sports, participates in a lot of different things that we do here, including our our unified programming, and has competed in the Skills USA Quiz Bowl. And after graduation, she plans to attend Husson University. So congratulations to her. And you guys covered what's going on this week. It's a busy schedule from the next month. And just so you know, I put what we call our management summary at your table tonight, which is the notes and kind of the order that we use for next Tuesday's district budget meeting. And that's all I have.
Tonight, we're looking at the end of April, and we have spent a little over $35 million. 77%, which is a little bit higher than usual. And as we discussed last month, our budget will be very close this year. And we have put a freeze on, but we've allowed, I guess it's a chill on, because we've allowed end of the year pre-planned items to continue on so that the students aren't not going on their field trips and things like that. So, but I just want to give a shout out to the RSU1 community and the administration for helping us achieve this goal. And nobody wants to see a freeze. They want to spend up every little bit that they have, but everybody's been real cooperative to help us meet that goal. They can still spend grant money, and we have 5 Maine Health grants and some other federal funds that we can work on. So, and revenues were at 82%, which is in line with what pretty much has been happening in the past. So that's it. Any questions?
So Deb, the tuition budget versus revenue, budgeted versus year-to-date revenue, is that something that is at a level that you expect as tuition dollars keep coming in through the end of the year?
Yes, we'll definitely meet that full
Okay.
amount. It's just a timing
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I thought. And the same thing with student activity?
Student activity is a little low.
Okay.
Lower than what it was in the past. I don't see any more coming in on that, so it must
Okay.
have been, well, I can reach out to Andrew and ask him. Usually the majority of the money comes through during basketball season, so.
Okay.
So that will be a little bit low, but our miscellaneous is a little bit high, so overall we should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other
Okay.
questions? Nope. Thank you. All right, no old business, so new business, 11.1.
Yeah, so we have Lance Whitehead here and Joe Britton from LaValle Brensinger. And so they're going to give a presentation mostly focused on the site review, even though the team has been meeting with our staff at Dyke Newell and Fisher Mitchell around visioning. But this is mostly focused around site selection. As the board knows, the building committee has it narrowed down to 2 potential sites. And we still feel like we're in a good spot with both of those. And they're going to kind of review some detail with you. And then we meet with the building committee next week, and we'll kind of take that forward to the building committee for trying to get a direction on which site we'd like to have additional testing be done on. So Lance, all yours.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we have a lot going on right now with this project, and just have a pretty brief update today. Like Patrick said, mostly focused on site with a lot of different things in the air right now. Tonight, really talking about all the different things we have going. That's programming, bubble diagramming, and site selection. We have made some real progress on site selection. We're down to 2 sites in the running. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be looking for your feedback for next steps on those, on the approval process for the site selection. So we've had an opportunity for 3 different jump around here just a little bit. Overall, just a reminder, this is a big process. State's 21-step process overall. Right now, we are really focused on doing 4 steps all at once. But these are some of the most important steps because they are kind of setting the size of the school, where the school goes, the theory behind how it's going to be organized, kind of big decisions up front. This process overall is very rigid with the state, but it also gives us enough flexibility to kind of make the school the best it possibly can be. We are looking to try to have this process done efficiently, but also done right. We are building a school that's going to outlast all of us, so we want to make sure every step gets the attention it needs. Ultimately, we're still targeting 2029 when students will be able to occupy this building, and we're staying on track with that schedule. So for a few things going on besides site selection, programming. So programming is kind of the recipe we're creating for the school, every space that needs to be in the building in order to make it a successful building. So we've got a lot of information coming in. We did just get our enrollment reports. Enrollments are predicting a significant decline across the next 10 years. So we're working through what does that mean for the number of classrooms and the number of special education spaces. We're also meeting quite a bit with special education administrators, understanding how will all of the student services be implemented and what spaces do they need to be able to accommodate all the current needs and the future needs. A lot of that is ongoing, and a lot of that is a negotiation, a constant feedback loop from the state as to what do they support, what will they fund, and kind of back to the drawing board and reworking through that. At the same time, we're doing ed visioning and ed specs. That's the kind of theory behind the school. We've had 3 workshops with the staff, the full staff of Dyke, Newell, and Fisher Mitchell, going through the theory, how we want the building to look in the future, how we want to implement student services. In our last one, we actually did bubble diagramming with all of the staff, broke them into 10 different groups, asked them to kind of take a look at all the different ways to organize the school, talk about what's best for students in different ways we could organize cohorts, how we can implement special education, how the student experience could be when they come through the door on. We've got all of that working now, and we're putting that into a report to kind of be concise about this is the way this, the school will operate in the future that works best for students. So kind of exciting stuff, just kind of in the process right now. At the same time, the state does review all of those steps along the way. So we're kind of going through all of that, saying, yeah, we think this is right, reviewing with the state, and then back to refining it. And we look forward to showing you that in the future. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Britton, who's going to talk through site selection, which is kind of the big heavy lift right now.
Lance. So as Patrick and Lance have mentioned, we're down to 2 sites. I want to step back for a minute and talk about the 3,839 parcels that we looked at in great detail. It's 7:12, so I think I got plenty of time for that. We're not going to do that. We're going to just skip forward a few. But I do want to talk about the process because we don't just jump into conclusions that we have 2 sites. We did look at the inventory focusing on Bath, and we did start with 3,800 something parcels, and then we start to walk backwards from there. So we look at sites that are greater than 14 acres. So that reduced it down to 90 available parcels. Then from there, we start taking out things that have cemeteries, CMP corridors, things that make it less desirable to put a school on. That brought it down to 66 parcels. From there, we dropped it down to 16 parcels or 7 sites. We start combining some of the smaller parcels into groupings to make a more viable option. So what we took out from when we removed it down, an additional 50 parcels off that was because located for public infrastructure, we want to make sure that we don't have to bring public water and sewer to these locations. So things that already have those infrastructures on site makes it more ideal. And then we took those 7 sites and we reviewed them with the building committee. So that was the first time kind of seeing the full body of work that brought us from 3,800 something sites down to the 7. From there, those 7 sites whittled down to 3. So those 3 sites, based on the conversation with the building committee, were reduced from 7 down to 3 because of access, future growth. We want to make sure that we don't put ourselves into a corner, that we pick a site that has no opportunity for growth beyond that. And then, of course, we want to look at Bath's comprehensive plan and make sure that we're not, crippling their plans moving forward. So from those 7, we got these 3, and these 3 are options 1, the middle school site. You'll see more on that. Option 2, the former Dyke Newell site, and option 3 is a privately owned parcel up on High Street, Washington Street. It was up on Washington Street, up in that end. So at that point, we reached out to owners to look if they were any interested in selling the sites. Of course, for the middle school and the former Dyke Newell, that conversation was pretty easy. But when we reached out to the option 3 owner, we didn't get any feedback. So that answer was no. So that came off the table. So from 3,800 sites, we came down to these 2. So middle school on the left, or it's really the sports complex, the sports fields, not the middle school itself, but that whole site, and then the former Dyke Newell on the right. I will point out when we reached out to landowners for the one option 3, we also reached out to the landowners to the adjacent properties of these ones to see if there's any interest for them if they wanted to sell. Just gives us opportunity again to expand our footprint for more of that future growth. And they all came back with negative, not all of them, but largely negative response. So that really had no opportunity for us to expand beyond the sites that you see there. So from here, we engaged with our civil engineer who's been leading this process to, oops, well, it jumped a little bit. Comparison matrix. So what you're seeing is a muddled up animation showing comparable features of both options 1 to options 2, looking at size, configurations, grades. You can see here, distance to water, sewer, and 3-phase power. That was that infrastructure. They're both right there on site, or all 3 are right there on site. Designated growth area, topography, parcel configuration, is it desirable? They were equal on both sites. Distance to fire and police stations. Both sites are about 1.2 miles apart, so they were very equal in terms of that comparison. And the big one here, you're going to see more on this in a minute, vernal pools, wetlands, and streams. So vernal pools are a very sensitive type of wetlands. Both sites did not show any signs of vernal pools, which was a great opportunity for us. Wetlands, of course, are on both sites, and there are stream segments on both sites. That just makes it more challenging when we start looking at how we can locate a school on these parcels. And then what you see highlighted in yellow are kind of really the big discrepancies between the two, or the big differences, I should say. So option 1, the middle school site, it's a 35-acre site. It's owned by the city of Bath. We don't need 35 acres, so we'd be asking for a small portion of that, 14 acres. Where option 2 is size to fit an elementary school, already at 14.8 acres. Site access, the middle school is a multi-point access opportunity. Again, I keep saying middle school, it would be an elementary school built on the middle school site, whereas the former Dyke Newell would be a loop approach. Both are fine, but just it's a different way of looking at it. The wetlands, there are more wetlands, 3.74 acres on the Dyke Newell site, whereas there's only 0.72, less than an acre on the middle school site. And the big one is LWCF, Land Water Conservation Funds. That is land that is encumbered. So the middle school has it, Dyke Newell does not. What that means is that any portion of that land that's encumbered by Land and Water Conservation Fund, if it gets impacted, it has to be rebuilt in kind at a different location. So it adds complexity, much more challenging permitting process, but nothing that's unheard of. And feel free to stop me if you have any questions as we go through this.
Is the LWF an expensive thing to rebuild? You need to rebuild it?
It can be. In this case, we're not looking to rebuild a whole lot. It's just 2 fields, and you'll see more about that in a second. But when you're comparing it against the 2 sites, the cost that you would see for relocating those fields for option 1 would be offset if you were to choose option 2, and the cost for the wetland mitigation that would be part of that. So it kind of washes out in the end. So this is looking at a test fit of how a school might look on the middle school site. And I apologize, Patrick, I'm telling you, I am cursed when it comes to IT. All right, just bear with me. So what you would have saw, an amazing display of animation. Just walk you through it. So everything grayed out here on the right are just things I wanted to point out. So 1, you can see the outline of the parcel. Again, 35 acres, much more than we need. We just need the 14. The new building is that red shape right there in the middle. That's just a test fit of how the building might sit on the site. We want to look for an ideal north-south configuration, so that the classrooms are facing in those more ideal sunlight exposures. But you can see it would sit there. Now 3, that's the practice softball field and the multi-purpose field. Those are the 2 fields that are encumbered and would have to be relocated. 4, primary site entrance, we'll be reusing this entrance over here, and then cutting in a secondary egress out, tying into the middle school circulation. 5, you have a dedicated parent drop-off loop, and 6 would be a dedicated bus loop. So separate loops, completely separate. You'll see in the Dyke Newell one, they're separate, but there's opportunity for crossover. And then proposed parking. We have 3 options here, here, and here. And then what I skipped over, selfishly, is the 7 here and here. Those are your playgrounds and open field opportunities for the students. And I think it's going to force me to pretend there are animations as I click through until we get to the next one. There we go. So this is the relocated fields at the Dyke Newell site, the former Dyke Newell site. So you can see the school below, ghosted out. But that would be the practice softball field and the multi-purpose field relocated and reusing the existing parking. They would be resurfaced and repainted. It'd look brand new, but we don't have to knock down any trees. We can use that existing footprint. And then all that highlighted green, that's your wetlands around here with some stream segments. Here and here. That's that challenging part that we'd have to kind of work with. But you can see in the relocated fields, we fit within that, so we don't have to mitigate any of the wetlands. Now looking at the same site, there we go. For putting a school on the former Dyke Newell, you can see that that space gets used up pretty quickly. When you think about the footprint, that's one thing, but then the vehicular circulation that goes all around it, the parking, it starts to eat that up quickly. So to walk you through again, pretend it's being all animated. One is the footprint. It looks bigger than the middle school site. That's because we're zoomed in more. The scale is different, but it is still a 90,000 square foot building. Again, 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot looking down. This will change as we continue to develop the building design, but this gives us a good placeholder of something to expect. Again, oriented on the site for the ideal north-south exposure. So here I was talking about the bus loops and the parent drop-off. So this line here closest to the building is your bus loop, and here is your parent loop next to it. Less of a loop, more of a lane. Because of the size of the site and being constrained by the wetlands all around us, we have to be efficient with our vehicular circulation, and that prevents us from having those dedicated loops. Instead, you have dedicated lanes, which means if you are a student getting dropped off on the parents or the parent drop-off side, you'd have to cross over the bus lane, which of course we will much further development in the design as opposed to just some dashed lines here. We will make sure that's designed appropriately for safety, being our number one factor there, but that is the key difference between the circulation of both sites. So where's that jump us to is the other thing you'll see here is the playground area is much more reduced on this site. So instead of having an open field and a playground area, you have what we're showing a playground area down here. But as you can see with all the wetlands around, it's not a lot of opportunity for a big open field. We are able to again reuse the existing entrance into the site. But as it stands right now, there's only a single point of entry. We would like to see a second means of egress, which is what we're proposing right here. So cutting down these grades and tying back out into High Street so that we can get that loop I was talking about in that comparison matrix. Excuse me. That puts us at 8. Nope, we got 8. So 9 is the wetlands. That's the big piece here. So again, all that green was the wetlands, and all the yellow are the wetland mitigation. That means that wetlands we have to remove from the site. So you have to pay a heavy fee. So when I was talking about that encumbered land, just for ballpark, the encumbered land or the encumbered fields being relocated over here would be about a $700,000 kind of rough order of magnitude cost. These wetland mitigation fees would be about $650,000 to $680,000 in fees. So when you're looking at one versus the other, they're comparable. Now there are still wetland mitigation fees at the middle school site, but that's in the ballpark of about 100 to 150,000, much fewer we have to deal with over there. No, there'd be no, I mean, it's still considered an active railroad, so we couldn't go across it. We couldn't engage it in any way. It's still an element there, but that doesn't take this site out of consideration. Any questions on these test fits before I move blindly into the next slide? Yeah, I mean, depending on which site we go with, these are all fall under the state-funded formula. You know, it's anything that gets impacted by a project, wetland mitigation, field relocation. If we picked a site that had a shed that had to be relocated for whatever reason, they would pay for the appraisal of that amount to put towards that project. So it's all, like I said, it washes out, but it still falls under that state funding structure.
question is, in terms of environmental study, the location at the Bath Middle School, we've paved over so much area. Is there an issue of adding more pavement to an individual area about runoff and about, I'm not saying the technical terms.
So impervious surface.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to study that. And as we go into permitting and local permitting and beyond that, that weighs heavily into the discussion, and they're going to have a lot to say about that. So for the amount of impervious surface you add, you have to have water retention and kind of, water treatment and all that kind of stuff. For Morris High School, we have those bioretention ponds out front. You can do it, in that kind of fashion. You can do it underground. There's several ways to do it, but you have to have that considered as you start to increase the impervious surface. And that's not just pavement, that's also the roof of a building. All of that is calculated into it.
And that would impact because we've already 3 other buildings close by.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a concentration.
Correct. Good question. I'm clicking behind my back here. Okay, so pros and cons, and Patrick, I could share the slide so that everybody can see these in more detail. But talk about the middle school site first. So the pro for this is by putting, again, we're consolidating Fisher Mitchell with Dyke Newell. So by putting essentially 2 elementary schools on the middle school campus, you're creating a 1 campus approach with the high school not too far from that. As I said before, a lot more opportunity for play fields and playgrounds on the middle school site. Stronger opportunity for future expansion. There is expansion opportunity at both, but it's much stronger, much more area to do so here, there. And then there is, as I said, it's owned by the city of Bath, so not only are those encumbered lands part of this, but there's also concern of that newly constructed sports complex, sports building, but that would not be impacted by this. That could remain on site. The cons, it does require the relocation of those encumbered fields, so there's costs associated with that, again, funded by the state. It does create, because of those relocated fields, a 2-site construction experience. So not only are you building on that middle school site, but now you're going to have a crew dealing with that, those relocated fields. And then, of course, the wetland mitigation fees applies to this one as well, but not as severe. On the former Dyke Newell site, the pros, it's already owned by the district, so there's not a lot of red tape to cross through or kind of unknowns to deal with. It's a pretty safe site. It's a more of a traditional single construction site approach. You do have full vehicular circulation, but again, it's not as forgiving as you would have it on the middle school site. And it does not include that relocated fields for the stuff encumbered by land and water conservation. Cons, it does have limited opportunity for that future expansion, very limited opportunity for playgrounds and play fields. It does require that secondary site access to be cut in, which is not an impossibility, but something to consider. And then the big one here is the wetland mitigation fees being closer to $650,000 to $680,000. So before we get into the immediate next steps, any questions on those 2 sites, the comparisons, or any of the previous 3,800 sites we were considering?
Just one question about if you have to make a second exit in the neighborhood area. Are neighbors consulted, and what are their sort of thoughts and feelings about now having buses that are?
Yeah, that all weighs in, and there'll be opportunity for them to voice their opinions on that at different hearings where they're all public. But we do have traffic movement or traffic studies that look into how that'll impact the immediate area. And the Maine Department of Traffic, the Maine DOT, has requirements. So if they do see something that has to be addressed, they will force it to be part of this project and funded by either state or local, depending on how far we take that approach. So there would be opportunity to maintain the expectation that is there now, even though we are creating a loop around those existing properties. Yep.
Questions?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the Bath Middle School site and the field relocation. Can I see that? Or
Can I ask you to pull that one back up?
Sorry. It's just, it seems like not possible. Like there's not enough
Sure.
room to put a building and then relocate fields and parking. And then it makes me just wonder about the parking.
Is there a way you could zoom in on?
Like if school, like if more events start when school is still in session for elementary school?
That would be, like the yellow gates we have out here. We would not have, so there'd be, the idea is to have a gate there that would
Yeah.
be locked. So, the elementary school is out back. And I think that.
So the,
Is that-
the school would be right now where the softball field is? I know where, yeah. So,
You-
but where are you gonna put those fields then? When that
Those are the
building's
two-
there?
Dyke Newell side.
Right, so the old Dyke Newell.
There's two-
Oh,
would be
there's
knocked
not even
down.
gonna be fields there.
No, just the two in the back though, just the softball field and the green space that goes towards the old Bath Road that used to use for practices mostly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I was confused.
Does
I
that-
thought you were saying,
and
I
so
was
that-
like, how is this possible?
All the other fields and all the other buildings on that site would remain as is. It would be in the back towards the old Bath Road.
Right, so the football, baseball, everything south remains. That's the softball field there.
Yeah.
And that's the multipurpose field. Those are the two fields that have to be rebuilt
Okay,
over at the
All
Dyke
right.
Newell site.
I was like, what? You guys must be mad.
Which is really good. Thank you for the question, because I was trying to figure out, so we're keeping the Dyke Newell site. In this scenario, we would still keep the Dyke Newell site, but we use it for fields? Or would we return the Dyke Newell site to the city of Bath?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of logistics here, and I do want to say that, we've been in close communication with Mark and the city of Bath, and certainly appreciate the working relationship we have with them, and, a conversation, which we've had these conversations, but, being cognizant of their concerns, questions, the history behind the work that's been done on those fields, all of those things, and wanting to understand, all the different perspectives. I mean, I think our building committee feels like this is a real parcel of interest. At the same time, if you flip this around, we just need to be cognizant and aware that for the city, one downfall, if they were willing to consider this as an option in the future, is that their maintenance staff, for example, would now have, instead of one complex that they're doing grounds on, that now you have fields at McMahon, but you also have fields that are mostly used for recreational purposes, but would be over at Dyke Newell. And so as far as, seating, tractors, just the maintenance on fields, you'd have two different locations now, which would be different than what it is.
Would the RSU retain ownership of the?
Again,
Dyke
it's
Newell?
all of this would be a negotiation of, would we, if we were able to negotiate something with the city of Bath and we were to go in this direction, then we probably would, then the next conversation would be that they would, it would be possibly we're taking on acreage, but then we're also giving acreage back. But again, that's all a process that we have to go through.
And where does Fisher Mitchell return that building and that property?
Possibly, as I said before,
return?
statute says that we can keep these buildings if we want, we can lease them out, but at the same time, what our practice has been here in this district, just like the high school and tech center, has been to, put those back, offer them back to the municipality or the city.
I thought the statute said that we had to give them back. That's
No,
what-
not
oh,
necessarily.
Okay.
Talking about future expansion, is that just kind of like a best practice, just thinking about population is expected to decline? Or do you have any concrete examples of future expansion?
Well, in this building, Morris, the wing going out in this direction where all the CT spaces are, the roof, if you ever, outside of the building, notice that the roof on this end is not as tall as the rest. That's a concrete deck. Our future expansion opportunity here is not out, it's up, which would probably be a similar exploration without really knowing the finer details of it at the Dyke Newell site. Because as you saw, there's not a lot of opportunity to go out, but we could always go up. And then at the middle school site, it'd likely be an opportunity to go out. It is a DOE requirement that we have to consider future expansion. So even though if we are experiencing declining population or declining enrollment, you never know if those numbers are exact or if they're going to swing in a different direction in the near future. So it has to be something that we must consider. Any other questions before I go to my last slide? Can you jump to the last slide? I apologize. So what we're looking for tonight, so our next building committee is on Tuesday, the 26th. And we're going to be showing them much of the same stuff with the animations corrected. And what we're going to be asking them at that time is not to narrow down to a single site. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to ask them to narrow down to a single site for further testing. So that's geotechnical, that's understanding some of that impervious surface conversations. If there's anything with the site in terms of, chemicals or things that are kind of nasty to deal with that we have to be removed from the site, all that kind of information. We don't know that yet because that takes money for that kind of testing. That's not something that you want to apply to both sites. So we're hoping that they would come down to a selection of one site for that testing. And if those tests come back in a beneficial way, then we would likely move forward in that direction. So what I'm asking for everyone tonight is approval because instead of going building committee to you guys, we're going to you guys and then building committee with whichever option they decide to move forward with on testing, asking you guys to kind of pre-approve the motion to move forward with that testing, or if you want us to come back and talk about it some more before we do continue in that direction. Does that make sense? I kind of bumbled my way through that.
It made sense. Any initial thoughts?
How much is the testing?
I mean, we'll be getting proposals for a lot of the work, but in a ballpark of you're talking about $60,000 to $100,000 worth of between geotech, soil sampling, and various tests that we'll have to do on that. We're hoping they're a little closer to the 60,000, but again, we have to reach out to some of those consultants and get proposals in.
And is that part of state funding?
It is.
And is there a max on that, cap on that funding that we can spend on?
We usually get the quotes run by the
Yeah.
DOE, get the approval.
The state reviews it because they do so many projects. They review it for anomalies. If they're seeing it way out of whack for what they're paying for any others, they ask us for a breakdown, but they look at a detailed proposal. And those proposals, like for geotech, are hourly rates and, per depth rate. I mean, they're pretty detailed proposals. So the state does that approval, just like when the RSU looks at it and we look at it.
So you could do two, the state would approve doing the testing on both sites?
I think there's going to be if we go with the middle school site, we need to do some testing on the Dyke Newell site because we're going to be dealing with construction on both sites. If the building committee says we really think this building should be on Dyke Newell and we should stop considering the middle school site, then we would only test the middle school site. Again, trying to be conservative with taxpayer dollars. Sorry, Dyke Newell site. Sorry, middle school site.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to be more complicated.
Any other questions about that or initial thoughts?
So you're just asking us you're not asking us which one we are leaning towards? No.
I think we were the building committee has kind of been that closest to this.
Yeah.
And so they're meeting next week and we're hoping that.
Do
the
they have a
building-
feeling? Or are they
Well,
swaying one
Not
way?
yet. I think the building
Yeah.
committee needs to hear this presentation with a level of detail.
Okay.
Then they will hopefully come to maybe a consensus of which one they'd like to pursue. And then we would have to have, if it's Dyke Newell, then we would just do it. If it's the city property, then we would need to, go back and talk with the city again and
Yeah.
meet with them and make sure that they're comfortable, with us moving forward with this next step in the process.
Okay.
So what is the actual ask of the school board this evening?
There's really no ask. I mean, it's FYI. I think Joe was trying to say that the question of if the building committee narrows it down to one site over the other for the purpose of testing next Tuesday, are you comfortable with that and trust them? Kurt is on that committee, or whether you, again, want something I'll obviously FYI you to let you know, or do you want these gentlemen to come back to the June meeting and I don't know, for you guys I don't think you need to officially vote on it, but kind of give your blessing to it. So that's really I think we want to go into next Tuesday's meeting and then I can move forward and I can give you it as an FYI if you have any questions. And if the majority of the board wants to make it an item for June's meeting, we can certainly do that. So, Kurt, did you want to?
Yeah, I guess if you have any comments on either site, Patrick or I could mention them at the building committee meeting.
I mean, if you have any just off, I think that's fine.
Am I allowed to say it even though I'm running the meeting? So I think my concern is option 2. Here are the words that I'm remembering: tight, limited, small. And I think that as a district, I can't think of any project where we've had to get smaller, or it's always even here, geez, we could have used a little more space. So I think that even though this first site might be a little more complicated, in the long run, it's, to me, seems like it's the best fit. And for all of the same reasons you were talking about, that the rec department might increase costs, I can see the school department with a much larger footprint and a lot more expenses having a smaller, not a smaller campus, but just everything together, more efficient. Thank you, Kurt.
My very limited perspective here. I'm so glad that it was mentioned that everything's consolidated like that, because there are a lot of school systems like Falmouth, for example, like everything is right on site, like the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, and it's just like it's so efficient and so easy to navigate. And I'm really glad that there was that it was included here, because there's something to be said about that for sure.
I have a family member who works in one of those campuses where there's a lot of schools all together. And my question is the proximity to like the high school, and when there's a lockdown, all the schools get locked down. I mean, there's that. So is there, and I'm really just asking that question of like, is there a larger sense of security questions about having an elementary school so close to a middle school or a high school, or the impacts of lockdowns or any safety issues?
I mean, that's hard to tell. I mean, Dave, who's sitting here tonight, probably has a better answer than I do with his background. But I think there's some pros and cons. But I mean, with a brand new building with all the safety features, much like this building, I mean, if we have something in the city of Bath, we're probably putting our schools in lockdown anyway. So I think there's, I can see both sides of that, but I don't see it as a major issue. I see the facilitation of staff where students can walk between buildings, just to have like, a buddy program in any area, but staff being able to walk between the buildings, students being able to go to field trips from it. Just, again, like Charles said, it's a campus feel that I think is really excited people on the building committee when it was first listed as an option.
Also not on the committee, and my opinion counts for little, but as a parent myself, I would be very worried about the Dyke Newell traffic situation, especially with how it almost seems like you would need like a walking, I don't know how you get kids to pass in front of buses safely without making a walking bridge like over the buses.
Something to be considered. Sure.
Yeah, but I don't have a great feeling about that at all. Makes me very nervous.
And I will say these are early test fits.
Right. But with such small space, something will have to compromise. And I know it's already stressful for those at Dyke Newell and Fisher, the current sites, for different reasons with traffic. And just with, what we know can happen, I definitely see that as a huge downside, in my opinion.
I think too, just to mention the new housing that BIW and Bath Housing Authority is creating and has created, a lot of that is very close to where that site one would be. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. ESEA, application and funds review, Katie.
I have the least exciting presentation of the evening. And there's a little half sheet coming around that you all should have. So these are our federal title funds over the years. We finally, within the last month, received the funding we'll have for Title I, Title II, and Title IV next year. And as you can see, Title I will decrease in total by just under 6,000. Title II is going to increase by just about 3,000. Title IV is mostly staying the same. So it's actually better, to be honest, than I thought it was going to be, with a net loss of about 2,500. I know in terms of what is funded, we publicly announce this every year as part of our application to use the funds, but we always take that Title IV amount and add it into the Title I amount, because that's what funds all of our staff for our intervention programs. So essentially what comes out of the total Title I and Title IV funds are our Fisher Mitchell and Dyke Newell interventionists. Also, just to update you, I did share that the ed tech interventionists that you discussed last time could be a 2 or 3, depending on what the interventionist is hired at. And so I know they're doing interviews for that this week, so I'll be able to update you. Maybe we'll put it in one of Patrick's Friday emails relatively soon about what we'll be able to post for that Ed Tech 2 intervention job, because that will also come out of these funds. And then we also are required to set aside a certain amount for our unhoused population for transportation, and 1% of the total has to be spent on parent or family funds. Right now, we have a series of student backpacks that, depending on the reading level of each student in intervention, they get this big backpack full of books that they get to keep with that required family funding that goes home with them over the summer. And so that's what we use that on every year. And then our Title II funds always we spend on one teacher that helps us reduce class size. It's usually someone at Fisher Mitchell. And then professional development funds when they're available, and we're able to fund all of the people. If we have a little extra, then I'm able to use them, for instance, on Maine Math and Science, or sending teachers to local conferences or things like that. So any questions about the amount or the plan, which honestly has been what we spent the money on the same things year after year, so nothing has really changed.
I apologize, Katie, for asking this again, but so how do we decide the funding for the Fisher Mitchell and Dyke and Newell different than the Phippsburg and Woolwich interventions? I apologize, I'm sure you.
Because of the percent of free and reduced lunch, those two schools no longer qualify. And so we can only spend the money on the Bath schools.
And that's because we don't have free and reduced hot lunch any longer. So the information that we use for that program is what? Is Maine Care?
Yes, it's all of the direct certifications.
Okay.
That number, because of how it's being calculated moving forward, has changed a little. So eventually, the way they increase these federal title funds is if your population increases or decreases, they always take a 3-year average. So while our direct certification numbers actually are now higher, everyone except for Woolwich qualifies. Because they used to not, and it's still a 3-year average, it will take a few more years before we potentially see an increase of funds, if they even still fund it the same way, if that makes sense.
Okay. And when we had free and reduced meals, Woolwich once qualified. I mean, I was paid that
Not
title
since
fund.
I've been here.
Okay.
So I'm in year 9, so it's been quite a while.
Okay.
And Woolwich is the one, when I was going over with Melissa Cole, the direct certification, it's the one that's, I don't want to misspeak, but she needed to get everyone to at least 25%, I believe. And it was the one she wasn't able to get that number to unless she used the average, which they allowed her to use. But it's by far, whereas our direct certifications for Dyke Newell and Fisher are in the high 50s, they're in the mid 20s.
Okay. And that's not we're not requiring any self-reporting,
No,
even though we
it's-
try to get that
no,
information.
That's foster students, that's, anyone who receives direct certification services. Those
Yeah.
aren't numbers that we create ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah, we just have 3 resignations. First, Melissa Rydell, who's an academic interventionist at Dyke Newell, and like to thank her for 25 years of service. Kelly Brochu, commercial arts instructor here at Bath Tech, thank her for 14 years of service. And then Amber McGowan, school counsel here at Morse High School for 13 years of service. Next one I have is just a nomination for you to vote on tonight is Jill Palmer. We're recommending to you. She will be the new music teacher shared between Dyke Newell and Fisher Mitchell. And we had 6 applications, interviewed 2 people, and you can see her education. And she's currently at Durham Community School, but before that she was at West Bath and also at Georgetown. So that is an action item.
Okay, great. Any questions, or I'll take a nomination?
Yeah, I move to approve that nomination. Jill Palmer.
So I think we really touched on a lot of areas this evening. I think that we talked about our community engagement with the boat building project and our partnership with Maine Maritime, the sustainability, facilities and operations. I think that the climate resilience group did a great presentation for that and really helped us look at our future building plans. I guess I think of ESA, I think that Katie's report does impact student achievement growth, but is that too much of a stretch?
No, I think that works.
Okay, all right. So I think we.
It's what funds the whole system.
Yeah, so I think we also was able to hit on that goal as well.
Excellent, great. So the next meeting date is the RSU1 Special Board Meeting, District Budget Meeting next Tuesday, May 26, 2026 at 6 p.m. A lot of sixes there. And Patrick, that's in the auditorium?
It is.
Okay. And then the regular board meeting will be on Monday, June 15th. When is graduation this year?
The 14th, the day before that.
All right, sounds great. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Great. Lou will be back next week. Thank you.